Greetings, everyone. Are we ready to start? I think we will. Everybody's here. Thank you so much. This session is on future trends for higher education closing the educational time warp. And the background for this, let me just say briefly, is that the world needs more education to address the problems that it's facing, but does not have the capacity really to fulfill that need. But even in many places, even in rural areas in highly developed countries. So the need to use technology and other means to expand education is certainly one area, but as we've seen with the advent of AI, with the internet, with the global challenges that we are addressing at the World Academy through the Human Security for All campaign, there are enormous intersection of issues for the future of the planet, for the future of humanity. So the question is, how can education serve the needs of humanity, of the planet, and what does the future look like? So with all humility, we need to address that question, knowing that many predictions of the future, arguably most, fail to become real, but certainly in terms of, for example, air flight, was said never to happen, and it did. At the same time, we need to ask, if we were to create new models of education, can we do it using the old approaches? Someone just asked me this question: what would be the new way to develop the new models? Will it grow out of what we're currently doing, or do we need new approaches? And at the World Academy, we do believe that transdisciplinarity, the use of technology, that there are many new ways or bringing together ways can address future needs, but we're open to exploring through panels such as this, how this would be done. So I'm wondering if we could go in the order. We have Ludvik next to me here in person, but interspersed. I don't know, Jonathan, if you would be willing to go first. Jonathan Miller from the Integrated Media Center, you could give a brief, each can give a brief statement of who you are, then maybe turn to Stephen, and then Ludvik, and to Fernando and Murat after that, given that we have several online. And I'd ask that you keep your remarks to 5 or 6 minutes, and I'll try to manage that, given that we have 5 people and just a limited amount of time for this whole session. So thank you. Let me, Jonathan, turn it over to you, and let's see if the technology works.
Very good. Thank you, Ralph. And let me just ask you, can you hear me okay if I speak like this?
Can.
Good, thank you. Good day, everybody, and thank you for having me. Just by way of introduction, by day, I'm an investor in media and related technology areas. Part of my investment profile over the years has been investing in education technology in numerous both early stage and later developed companies. I've been a director of the largest educational publisher in the United States for K through 12, which is Houghton Mifflin. I've been an advisor to Harvard and MIT in the edX joint venture that they had since its inception, which has now been subsequently bought by another company, and still continue to work with Harvard on their online educational efforts, which I think will be relevant here, and I'll mention a few things in a moment. Additionally, and somewhat anecdotally, I am the son of 2 university professors. My mother was at Wellesley and Harvard Medical School. My father was chair of sociology at BU. So I literally grew up Boston University. So I literally grew up in academia, and I think have seen a lot of both changes, and I think, to Ralph's framing, the need for further change and evolution. And so to lay out a logic chain, here's one of the ways I think about it. in order to evolve education, one of the first things we have to do is just have a mindset, a pedagogy, if you will, around embracing flexibility. And this is, of course, a mindset, but and requires the educators to embrace that and evolving their courses continuously and their teaching continuously. But to my mind, this can't be done without the integration of technology, or effectively or at scale without the integration of technology. So I believe that technology plays a core, not a peripheral role, but a core role going forward in education, both call it on-campus, on-site learning, distance learning, and overall learning, because that is the way that we can update courses, create them modularly, incorporate current events, incorporate much more diversity of experience, and so on. And I think it's very, very key that as we go forward, the professors, the teachers, the schools have some of this attitude. And I have experienced firsthand a mixed attitude in this regard. But I think, one aspect is, of course, the ability to continuously update the curriculum and make it more relevant and continually more relevant to, I think, the real world that's needed out there. I think another principle, and again, this involves technology, is continuous learning, that it's not just the 3, 4, or whatever years of secondary, let's call it, education and graduate education, but how do people learn over the course of their lifetimes, their careers, and how does that take place? Again, I believe that has a very significant technology component. And I've been personally involved in any number of debates around this, as you might imagine, given what I said about edX and some of those efforts and related. And I would point to let's try to get some facts, as they say. I'm going to point to 2 studies of different forms of education. These are meta-analysis studies. I can provide these if folks are interested in detail. But I think clearly the pandemic period was a watershed in terms of the involvement of technology in learning, forced or otherwise, distance learning, etc. And since then, the largest meta-study that I'm aware of, which is about 1,400 studies that it looked at the varieties of education from on campus, if you will, blended, computer-assisted instruction, etc. And of that meta-study, again, about 1,400 sub-studies underneath it, it was very clear that blended and CAI, computer-assisted instruction, were the most effective in the various measurements that were used. And so that combination showed up after the pandemic period as being particularly effective, and saliently so. I mean, the results were stated unequivocally. Now, how much is that a result of the pandemic period? So one of the things I've looked at is earlier meta-studies that took place prior to 2020, or looked at the effects prior to 2020, and one that looked at about 900 plus studies around health education, essentially concluded the same thing. So these were all studies that took place prior to the pandemic. And so I think we've seen a consistent through line in these large scale analysis of some form of blended education, some form of CAI being the most effective along traditional measurement axes, as being the most effective means of education. Again, that really is the combination in most cases of technology applied with in-person learning and personalization and all the things that come with it. So I think that it's not just a, if you will, theoretical debate. There's actual very real evidence that the ability to harness technology in these ways is effective. And I would submit it's still very early days and can get much, much more effective. And so I think, we should ground our discussion in my view in light of what I think is now emerging as facts in terms of efficacy. So that's kind of one. And in one more minute, just explain one of the most interesting aspects of what Harvard has done, and this is really under the guidance of Murat, who heads their efforts. He's the vice provost for advances in learning at Harvard. Through Professor Anand's initiatives and the folks working with him, Harvard has stated a goal to educate 5% of the world's population. This to me is a remarkable thing that we've worked on. Because first of all, if you're familiar, as I'm sure you are, the Ivy League colleges, they are built on actually fundamentally not educating 5%, but educating something, I don't know the exact math, but 0.0005%, something like that. It's been the traditional ethos of that type of institution has been to educate the few, not the many. And in order to educate the many, which in this case would imply numbers in the hundreds of millions, one, it's obviously an embrace of technology. Two, it's an embrace of distance learning and really changing the educational pedagogy to be inclusive of a significant part of the world. I would submit, and in closing for my opening remarks, that if other institutions had similar goals, this would be a fundamental change to the educational resources offered to the world, and have a significant impact on the educational level that the world is able to achieve. So I throw that out both as an achievement, if you will, at least in terms of stating it, and working towards it, and also a challenge for all of us to potentially support as we work with various institutions of higher learning to encourage them to be open to both the change that's needed, the evolution, the continuous evolution, if you will, and the ability to disseminate that in effective ways throughout the world. So thank you for listening for a few minutes, and Ralph, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I have a lot of questions coming for that, but come back and hopefully at the end. I want to make sure. Can you hear okay? I think so. Ludvik would like to go at the end. So Stephen, would you be willing to go next and keep your remarks to no more than 6 minutes? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm delighted to be here in this session. And I want to thank all of the co-sponsors of the conference for putting this important discussion together, and the entire conference. This will be a rather free-flowing set of reflections. I think that within the Bridges Coalition, Bridges is the humanities inclusive, humanities co-directed sustainability science coalition of UNESCO's Management of Social Transformations program. Within Bridges, we have been emphasizing, as WAAS has been doing, and as a number of our other very close partners, like the Club of Rome, have been doing, transdisciplinarity in practice, not just in ambition. And that's hard work. The contextual is extremely important to transdisciplinary and co-production of knowledge, and application of the knowledge that derives from those co-productive engagements at various scales in our societies. And with that broad ambition in mind, I completely agree with everything that we just heard from John Miller about the need for educational technologies to help scale the needs to be meeting the challenges in the coming decades and the remainder of this century. The important thing is that we can strike an appropriate balance between how we conduct education and how we conduct learning, and the necessary agency and activity that we need from the learners, and that we maybe rethink the way, in the unidirectional way in which learning has the legacy of the 19th century, whereby expertise was bestowed to the uninitiated, and that knowledge somehow derived from these more rarefied circles, and could sort of be bequeathed to a larger number of people. This is a model that doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for a long time. And I think for us to begin to think about what we can and must do to be able to deal with the challenges facing our societies, facing environments around the world, we really need to think about how we recast ourselves as co-learners, and the development of new literacies, and new competencies that are part of a lifelong mission of learning. And so higher education, formal education is extremely important, obviously. These are the structures that have invested tremendous resources and have a long history of developing specializations that can enable us to address specific challenges. At the same time, the balancing of that, of the more rarefied development of expertise and specialization on one hand, and the need to scale up, and the need to be properly inclusive in ways that are not colonial, and that do not presume that there is a universalist sort of standard and a universalist set of values and culture that that applies everywhere in the world. To do that, I think we have to find this proper balance between what these new tools, what AI can help bestow, what other ICT technologies can help bestow, what forms of sort of broader implementation of learning tools and methods and agendas around the world at greater scales, what they can do without casting learners into positions of passive participants in that process, because the active participation is absolutely crucial. Without that, I think we're likely to fail if we don't begin to recast what we're doing as part of a collective set of partnerships and help to encourage that sense of agency. Now, I'm keeping this all at the very broad level, and I realize my time is sort of coming to an end now. I just want to set that tone. How can we begin to think about bridging that gap between what we need to do for scale and what we need to do contextually that is respectful of the great diversity of geographies, cultures, linguistic heritage, traditions, environments, etc. So I'll end on that thought.
Thank you. I continue to have questions, and so you seem, let me just throw them out and let each of you address this. From Jonathan's, I had the question, do we need teachers if we're going to reach everyone, or how could we, if in fact the hybrid or the that model is the one, that blended model seems to be best, how are we going to reach everyone? There's not an adequate number of teachers or faculty or institutions. But Stephen, you're raising the question, how do we do it without cultural dominance of, if we're going to use at scale and bring the context of each student's lived experience and different cultures. So there are all these issues that we begin, and how do we bring the heart and soul of agency that students bring to the table are huge challenges we currently face. But if our goal is both to serve and save the planet, love to have you each, as you talk about what you're doing, there is a continuing dialogue that I think we could have on each of these issues. Fernando, representing the International Association of University Presidents, president of CETYS University, who I worked with when I was president of an accrediting commission, know the university well. And so, Fernando, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Rob. Pleasure to be here. And I will divide my remarks into context, into some changes that leadership must continue, and then a very brief perspective or remark on AI. I think that it's clear that on the one hand, we do continue to live in a world where the trend is going to be to make sure that we address access, that we address quality, and that we address relevance. It is a world where if you address quality, you will inevitably move towards the international arena. You will be recognized not only in your own context, but elsewhere. If you are involved in the international arena, unless you do it with quality, it is going to be a short-lived effort. We're going to live, or we will continue to live, in a world where It is not only about developing the whole person, but also addressing to some extent employability and relevance to context. And as we have seen, it is also a context where we are facing and will continue to face the 3 Ps: politicization, populism, and polarization. And it is a world where universities are instruments to build bridges and to bring others together for a common understanding. So there's a lot to say about what we know, a lot to say about what we've heard about, but maybe don't know, and a lot to say about what we're doing. So let me move on to share with you some things that from the perspective of IAUP over the last 3 years, we've identified, many of which are still valid. This is from a leadership perspective. One is that leaders must exercise the notion of nimbility. Nimbility meaning to be quick and strategic in terms of what one does. To exert or exercise a bifocal leadership, meaning that you need to look at short-term as well as long-term. Making sure that we are moving towards programs that are short, accessible, and laser-focused on skills and workplace. An emphasis on more personalized programs and more individual learning. A focus that is intercultural and international. An education that addresses and supports student mental health and student success. An education that tries to address the need to seek and develop talent, the Einsteins that are scattered all over the world. Although the recent trend and things that we've heard about say contrary, I think that globally, looking at diversity and inclusion as a strength and acting with empathy, solidarity, flexibility, and opportunity. And being increasingly mindful of mission, quality, operational and financial sustainability, strategic in all we do, and acknowledging that we are moving from what we still call the university, and as it has been known, to what is increasingly a glocal, that means global and local, multiversity, because of the constituents, because of the learning models, because of the different functions and roles that universities play. And I think that it is also important to acknowledge the role that faculty play as we face crises like COVID, as we look at challenges like incorporating digitalization. We're also looking at a broader perspective on internationalization. It is now e-mobility. It is about internationalization at home. It is about partnerships that we need to be looking at, and where it has been increasingly the case that from the conventional and traditional model of only face-to-face, we are, as was said before, envisioning a future where we are incorporating more technology and increasingly being accompanied by hybrid and online models. So I think that as we move forward, we also have to acknowledge AI. It is not something that is going to go away. We have no option but to adapt as something that can be positive, but that we need to look at with particular attention, and where we need to be mindful of the human dimension. We need to acknowledge that there are challenges, opportunities in terms of privacy of data, in terms of mathematical biases that this brings with it, and the need for transparency and accountability. As leaders, we need to make sure that we do not move away simply and dismiss, but face this and act decisively. And to conclude, I think that looking to the future and seeking to continue serving our students in our respective societies, we need to acknowledge what is working, take note of what has failed, improve on what makes sense to do so, and seek to reinvent and innovate that which we must explore, extending the boundaries of what we know. We should strive to become better, of higher quality, responsive, relevant, resilient, more innovative and inclusive, as we seek to achieve student success and greater welfare and well-being in our societies. Thank you.
Thank you. You leave me with the question of, can we define quality across global borders, apart from global league tables and ranking and non-quality issues, arguably, and selectivity and exclusivity. But again, another great question, and thank you so much.
Thank you. First, dear Professor, Vice Rector, Professor Dr. GÜNENÇ, thank you for offering this facility, great facilities. It's really nice. I'd like to express appreciation and as well kind of science. It's such a picture. First, that's changing. They, everything can changing fast, faster than it was in the history. And from day to day faster. That's why this is a so actual issue, question today, how to organize and to implement university education. During these 2 days we have heard so many things. It's very difficult to argue and difficult to add anything better. I would like to propose, to make some proposals, some idea for the future of universities, maybe for discussion as well. First, there is needed development of modern and attractive curriculum at the universities. Second, there is needed to implement new and modern teaching methods, including IT and artificial intelligence communications. And next, there is needed institutional transformation of the universities, taking in account the new culture of young generation, new values and new experiences of young generations, new expectation of young generations. That's why there is needed as well to offer the possibilities of modern technology. And next, urgent is to educate educators. Educators should be re-educated. Lifelong learning for everybody, especially for employed people. And next, needed is a reform on the legislation level. Today in the world, including the need of internationalization and of the universities, and need of the new principles concerning the taking in consideration ethics and aesthetics. And as well, there is needed to follow the principles of interdisciplinarity, transnationality, and building bridges among academic disciplines, building bridges among generations, building bridges among cultures in the world. And as well, we have to, at universities should follow the principles of quality, relevance, and rationality. Quality could be developed as well in the competition. Relevance is proved by the employability of the graduates and is proved by the inventions of the graduates. And finally, there is needed rationality of spending state money. All those issues have been today and yesterday already presented. I would like to open maybe to the discussion about those proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Many different points to work on to further discuss. Murat, are you there? You can. It looks like you're moving right now. You're on.
Yes.
Look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's a perfect session ongoing, and it's a privilege to speak. So thanks a lot for all the sponsors and the organizers to start with. And it has been amazing to listen all the comments from the distinguished speakers. And I strikingly agree with most of it. And I would like to be provocative to be maybe add a cream onto the cake they just cooked, because they're all right when they are saying things around how technology is shaping the way that we are learning, and shaping the academy, shaping the high schools, the teachers. We need to retrain the teachers. We need to maybe change the aspects of learning. But if you go back to the basic education, so start with why I'm talking about this. I'm not a teacher, I'm not a professor, I'm not an academician, but I'm an entrepreneur on the field. So I've been working with technology for the last 25 years, of which half of it in a multinational company, big American company who invented computers. And the rest, I was driving my own company, focusing on human experiences with technology. What I realized is, rather we do it in high school. I have two sons. The lessons they love and the lessons they hate, it's not about the context. It's about who's teaching them and where they are being taught at. If I look at myself through my education in my university, in my adult learning right now, because we learn new things, it's all about either physically or digitally how we experience the learning experience. So I think we need to go back to the good old days of ancient Greece and how people, in fact, learned. If you are talking about the future of education and technology together, because technology is an amplifier at the end of the day. It amplifies the contents that the teacher is trying to send and the students trying to receive. Maybe the rules of the game is changing a bit with technology, but at the end of the day, education is storytelling. How it changed, the technology has changed that storytelling is by making it more immersive. In the 90s and early 2000s, we used to use the word interactive more, but it was still, you touch something, you get something. You touch a button, you get something. But now immersive become more in fashion, because you don't need to touch things anymore when you go to spaces. You embrace the content either on your screen, on your game. For the younger generations, they learn a lot on games, in metaverse or games, actual gamification of content. In museums, I work a lot with museums and cultural spaces. it's very, very important to make those content, physical content, in fact, more immersive. So, in fact, it's a very exciting area to be in. It's very uncertain. We are all pioneers of change when we are in education and technology, and we are doing it all together. Because we all need to stick to our conservative values of storytelling, but at the same time, we need to make the platform very immersive. Otherwise, in today's world, beyond any generation, beyond any age, we get bored very easily. In the classroom, on the screens, on our iPhones, iPads, or whatever tablet you are using, we got bored very easily. Although we are looking at the screen, we are not listening. So we need to be very creative. And I think everyone touched to AI. And last few weeks, I've been in different AI events from defense industry to education industry to telcos to real estate. Everyone is talking about AI. And most of the people are talking about how AI is invading the spaces human capital has been capitalizing with its knowledge so far. So we need to somehow coexist with this new wisdom. But again, it's like the last speaker just very, very kindly put, we need to re-educate, not just the teachers, but maybe the people, our kids, about the subjects they learned a few years ago. I recently read a report that I found in my drawer from 2018, a very reputable analyst company called Gartner, who publishes trends on technology. On 2018 report, AI is at the bottom of the curve, that it's an emerging technology. Now, everyone is talking about it. And week by week, we are hearing some, Mr. Fernando was talking about the pace and the change of skill sets that we need to set is changing due to the change in AI. But we still enjoying communication. We're still enjoying interaction. We're still enjoying learning new things. And we are still enjoying uncertainty. So technology and AI is not changing this. And my statements is applicable from age of 5 to, I would go 75. Those 4 things, I think, common traits for humankind. And it has been like that 400 years ago, 300 years ago, and today as well. So I think we should focus on those aspects of being human and utilize that human capital and human capital's curiosity on learning new things and shape education with technology without forgetting that it's not for the sake of technology we are creating, it's for the sake of human we are using technology. That's the major mistake I'm seeing in not just in education, but across all sectors that I'm working with. People are focusing on technology rather than focusing on the content itself. So again, I think it was either John or Fernando said about making it internationally acceptable when we are retraining the skill set, because there's a huge trend on human capital movements these days, especially new generation finishing their universities. They love starting new lives in different parts of the world. I'm not just talking about the immigration through climate change or political reasons, but it's about starting new jobs. There's nomad visas. Now in 45 different countries have digital nomad visas where you can go and start your own company, even if you are young, if you are in the creative industry. Lots of people doing that. So when we're talking education and new skill sets coming with technology, we need to really think about everyone should be adapting their skills, lifestyles to different cultures. So it's challenging, it's exciting, but I think technology and human are next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, and will be like that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes left on I'm reminded that over the years in my career in higher education that I've been told or have read many who say that technology will mean that universities will go away. That's never happened. Many of you know the people who said those things. I think the need is greater than ever, but we are going to need new approaches, as you've all talked about, which is incorporating new technologies, gamification, immersing students, the arts and sciences. I'd like to pose for all of you a question. Well, one other comment, and I'm reminded that in working with a lot of university presidents myself, you're always living with the crisis of the day and putting out fires, and also the political winds of the day, and thinking about anything 10 years down the road or what higher education or education might be is often left on the shelf. Most strategic plans are where we are today and how do we build from there. Few universities have moved beyond that. But there are those who say that AI will transform the very organic nature of what it means to be human, not just education, but all of culture and society. And I do wonder if you, in very brief time that we have, and with Sam Altman claiming that the newest version of ChatGPT now can think like a human, arguably whether that's true or not, but that day is fast coming upon us. With quantum computing and whether that will merge with AI, I'm not sure technologically. But it does raise the question, will technology advance beyond our capacity to deal with the changes that it's going to bring about us? And because of my own view, because of the increased commercialization of AI, the ability to control it and the privatization of it is going to be extremely difficult to regulate and to understand it. So I just wonder your thoughts about how do we maintain the continuing evolution of what it means to be human, to bring greater sensitivity to the planet. I know each of you are concerned about that, or I believe, know many of you who are. Any thoughts about how do we manage this tsunami of change that's coming our way, or what arguably could be a tsunami of change, and maintain the best parts of education and transform it to address these changes?
Ralph, if I might jump in, because I also have a speaking engagement behind this. We're a couple minutes over, so if you allow me a quick remark.
Quickly.
Yeah, and that's one of the, to your question, by the way, I love what all the panelists said, and so much to comment on if we had the time. But to your specific question, that's one of the reasons in my opening remarks, I talked a bit about the efficacy of blended education, because that by definition keeps the human, if you will, in the equation, and that, at least to date, has been shown to be the most effective means of education of all the ones that have been at least studied in these meta studies. So I think that's a very hopeful note, if you will, to your question, that the human in the equation does matter to the outcomes, and hopefully that will always, in my view, hopefully that will always be the case.
Fernando, you had a comment?
Yes, several very quickly. And, number one, I go back to one of the aspects that I mentioned for leaders. We need to make sure that we are nimble and that we are bifocal. We need to be quicker in terms of our responsiveness, and we need to be short-term as well as long-term, number one. Number two, Joseph Aoun, Northeastern University, points out that just like we have moved in many cases to incorporate digital literacy, we need to begin to incorporate AI literacy, so that it's not the technology, it's not about AI, it's about how that spreads across the curriculum and how we sensitize students to the value of AI as an instrument on a go-forward basis. But that needs to be accompanied by humanics, which is the human perspective as we move forward. And just a third comment to conclude my remark is that anything we do, we need to address organizational culture. The higher education arena is not going to change. A college or university is not going to change unless we incorporate how the culture is and how it needs to adapt and to adjust moving forward so that whatever we incorporate is not short-lived but long-term. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, you're going to be presenting next, and I need to get out of this chair. I may just ask, Murat, do you have a final word you'd like to comment?
Of course, I'll follow Fernando's example, very short bullet points. I think if you just leave this AI debacle to corporations, most of the privately owned companies sees human capital as a burden, and they are trying to replace it with AI systems or autonomous systems. So we need to create policies around ethics on how AI is used, and that should be at the organizational level and international level. And this should be very quick because we are about to lose ground on that. We shouldn't stop innovation, but we need to have some ethical angle to it. Very quickly agreed. I think we need to also define role of the academy in the new sense. I think the future of education will be micro-certification, a lot of micro skills. We will have new types of polymaths on that in this age. An academy needs to be in a position to validate this, plan this, strategize this, to make sure these are real, that these are correct, that those are in need. And third and the last one, I think we need to move away from human-centric approach into education. We need to look at planet-centric approach, because we have huge problems that are affecting the world, like climate change and many other things that are beyond person. So we need to create that awareness in our education system that it's first the planet, then society, then human, for the good, so we can all survive interdependently together happily. I think it starts with the education. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And know that the World Academy is going to stay with you and with each of these issues. Thank you very much for your participation and those of you who are here.